Good morning everyone, especially to you Sir Gamali. I am Peter John M. Bilamidi, base Cream 2, Section C. Today I will going to report the chapter 1, the photography definitions, historical background and principles. The definition of photography of terms. Number 1 is literal definition. The word photography is a derivative of the Greek words phos, which means light, and graphia, meaning write. Therefore, photography best translate to write with light. Number 2, modern definition. Photography is an art of or science which deals with the reproduction of image through the action of light upon the sensitized materials, which the aid of camera and its accessories and the chemical process involved therein. Aquino 1972. Number 3, technical legal definition. Modern photography may be defined as any means for the chemical, thermal, electrical, or electronic recording of the image of scenes or object formed by some type of radiant energy, including gamma rays, X-rays, ultraviolet rays, visible light, and infrared rays. This definition is broad enough to include not only the conventional methods of photography, but almost any new process that may be developed. Police photography. Police photography is an art of science or science which deals with the study of the principles of photography, the preparation of photographic evidence and its applicant to police work. C. Forensic photography is the art of science of photographical documenting a crime scene and evidence for laboratory examination and analysis of purpose of court trial. The historical evolution of forensic photography. The basic components of photography. Number 1, light. The days of creation. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Now, the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, Let there be light, and there was light. God saw the light was good, and He separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness is called night. And there was evening, and there was morning. The first day, there was morning in the first day. By Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 to 3. The equipment. The portable camera obscura, Latin for dark chamber, was used by artists or painters to get accurate perspective of natural scene and skill of their subject. Number 3, chemical. Light sensitivity of silver nitrate and silver fluoride solution was discovered and investigated in Thomas solution was discovered and investigated. Wedgwood and Hampey DV produced photograms through photography. In 1839 is generally known as the birth year of photography. William Henry Fox Talbot explained a process he had invented, calotype, at the Royal Society of London. The calotype used paper with its surface fiber impregnated with light-sensitive compounds. Louis Jacques Mandy Daguerre made a public demonstration in Paris. Daguerreotype, in collaboration with Joseph Nip, the daguerreotype form an image directly on the silver surface of a metal plate. With Talbot's calotype and fixation was only partial, while daguerreotype's images were made permanent with the use of hypo. In 1848, Abel Nip's descendant Victor introduced a process of negatives on glass using albumin, egg white as binding medium. In 1850, Louis Desire Blanquart Evard introduced a printing paper coated with album to achieve a glossy surface. In 1851, Frederick Scott Archer published a wheat plate processed with collodion, a viscose liquid that dries to a tooth flexible and transparent film, replaced album. In 1885, gelatin emulsion printing paper was commercially introduced based films in 1889. During this time, cameras were crude, the lens could not from the true image, and the sensitive materials required long exposures and could not reproduce colors and shades of gray. It was in 1856 when John Herschel coined the word photography. In 1861, James Clerk Maxwell researched on colors. In 1890, full corrected lenses were introduced. In 1906, a plate was placed on the market that could reproduce all colors equivalent shades of gray. In 1907, Lamère color process was introduced. A panchromatic film was used, but with blue, green, and red filter. In 1914, U.S. Eastman Kodak made a color subtractive a process called Kodachrome. In 1935, color process came out together with electronic flash. In 1947, Edwin H. Land introduced Polaroid, the one-step photography. In 1960, laser was invented, making possible holograms, three-dimensional picture. In 1988, the arrival of true digital camera. The first true digital camera that record image as a computerized file was likely the Fuji DS-1P of 1988, which recorded to a 16 MB internal memory card that used a battery to keep the data in memory. This camera was never marketed in the USA. The first commercially available digital camera was the 1992 Kodak DCS-100. It used a 1.3 megapixel sensor. It was priced at $13,000, the first consumer camera with the liquid crystal display. In the other term LCD. On the back was the Casio QV10 in 1995, and the first camera to use compact flash was the Kodak DC-25 in 1996. In 1999, Nikon D1 a 2.74 megapixel camera was the first digital SLR with the price of under $6,000. This camera also used Nikon f-mount lens, which means that film-based photographers could use the same lens they already own. In 2003, Canon introduced the 300D camera, also known as digital reveal, a 6 megapixel in the first DSLR priced under $1,000 to consumer. Criminal application. The history of forensic science, the criminal investigation is both rich in exciting the discoveries and observation of our predecessors is likewise surprising and comforting. The great men and women who paved a path of enlightenment in crime investigation continue to teach us long. After periods, these are the appreciation that we should aspire to endow. We are fortunate to work in a profession with a strong foundation and bright, seemingly endless future. By Thomas Adair, editor, The Sun. In 1854, an Englishman, Mandox, developed a dry plate photography eclipsing Daguerre's wet plate on 10 method. This made practical the photography of inmates for prison records. In 1859, in the United States, one of the earliest applied forensic science was in photography. It was used to demonstrate evidence in California case. Enlarged photographs of signature was presented in the court case involving forgery. In 1864, Odelbert's first advocate the use of photography for the identification of criminals and documentation of evidence in crime scene. Early photographs of accused and arrested person were beautifully posed as example of Victorian photographers at the 20 to 30 years. Later, every major police force in England, in the United States, has roguish galleries, full face profile and full body shot. In Europe, in the United States had roguish gallery, photograph of criminals became an integral part almost all police department. In 1882, Alphonse Bertillon, who initiated anthropometric measurement for personal identification, was also involved in various means of the documentation by photography, which developed into a fine science for criminalistic, when he photographed crime scenes and formulated a technique of contact photography to demonstrate erasure on documents. In 1902, Dr. R.A. Ries, a German scientist trained in chemistry and physics at Lausanne University in Switzerland, he contributed heavily to the use of photography in forensic science and established the world earlier crime laboratory that served the academic community in the Swiss police. His interests include photography of crime scenes, corpses, and blood stain. He made a trip to Brazil in 1913, where his experience in criminalistic was presented to the Western Hemisphere for the first time. In 1910, Victor Balthasar developed a method of photographic comparison of bullet and cartridge cases, which act as an early foundation of the field of ballistic. And that's all for my report. Thank you and God bless.